Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today as we present the shared access or mutual aid made easier with the Knox eLock system. My name is Tiffany Trin. I am the Director of Marketing here at the Knox Company. So today's discussion focuses on access coordination and how departments and agencies can make sure that the right people have access to the right locations, especially when response extends across jurisdictions, or maybe even it involves multiple authorized partners. So as access needs expand, managing physical or mechanical keys and different access procedures can become very difficult. Today, we'll look at how the Knox eLock system and Knox Connect can help simplify that process while also allowing each participant department or agency to be in control over its own access. We'll also talk about opportunities beyond the traditional mutual aid, including public works, utilities, schools, security, and other authorized partners. So today's presenter is Justin Daniels. Before joining Justin, he served as the fire marshal at the University of Oklahoma, where he was responsible for fire and life safety programs across a large, complex campus environment. That experience gave him firsthand perspective on many of the challenges we'll be discussing today, such as coordinating emergency access, working across departments and agencies, and balancing rapid response with security and accountability. Today, Justin works closely with departments and agencies to help them evaluate how Knox solutions can support their access strategies. He brings both the end user perspective of a former fire marshal and a practical understanding of how these systems can be applied in the field. Justin, I'll turn this over to you.
Thanks, Tiffany. Hi, everyone. I got a quick look at the list of folks who are going to be here today, and I know there's some folks out there that I've met with in person at either at a conference or in past life work experiences or just recently to just talk through what's going on in your jurisdiction and how we can be of help. So I feel like I understand a lot of what's going on out there and a lot of the challenges that you face every day. So what we want to do is be a solution to those challenges and provide some ideas on how we can help you expedite the process of getting to the people that you need to get to every day in your jurisdictions. So today we're gonna talk about the eLock system. And what you're going to learn today is, I know a lot of you already are using the eLock system, and many of you aren't. But if you're here today, you've heard of Knox, you know who Knox is, and you know that Knox is a trusted partner to fire, police, EMS, all across the U.S. and Canada. So what we're going to talk about today are just some ways that we can, hopefully reduce the complexity of maybe how you're responding today using our mechanical key system or other ways that you're working with other departments, or whether that's interjurisdictional with police, or maybe a campus law enforcement, or with a neighboring jurisdiction. We're going to talk about how we can help with that. And then we're also going to talk about how you can maintain local control. I know it's really important for all of you to have the control of who has access to what. And you don't want to allow people who should not have access to buildings, whether they're businesses or municipal buildings, or schools. We want to limit who has the access to get into those facilities. So we're going to talk about how you can maintain that local control while also allowing others that should have access to be able to get in. And the great part about the eLock system that maybe goes beyond what you can do with the mechanical key is that you can start allowing or start having the conversation with other entities within your jurisdiction. The public works folks and utilities people who have a job to do sometimes in incidents. Private security, it seems like more and more places are getting their own private security. And that's great, because now we have eyes and bodies at the scene that can help. And they need access as well. And they can help assist us with access. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about layers, and we're going to talk about how to control that. And then the most important part is planning that mutual aid and planning that cross-jurisdictional and interdepartmental access so that everybody knows what's going on, and that also helps with your local control so that you know who's getting in and where. So the access needs are just continuing to expand because what I'm hearing in the field a lot is we're being asked to do more, right? Fire departments are being asked to do more with less. Our staffing is, not necessarily where it needs to be. And so we're expanding and we're helping each other more. We're using those mutual aid options more. We're using the resources within our jurisdiction a little bit more because we don't have the resources to, always be there first or always be there when we need to be there. So we're expanding the use of the system for you so that you can invite those other parties in. You can invite those other responders to get there without losing accountability. With our eLock system, what we're going to talk about today is the beautiful part of it is I can give people access and I have that. I'm not losing any accountability. In fact, I'm gaining some. Now I know who's accessing what and when, and I know if they've checked a key out of their key secure or their key defender, and I know when they've put it back. So having all of that accountability allows you to expand to include other partners, which helps all of us do our job more efficiently. So why does it get more complicated? It's for all the reasons that I just explained, right? So maybe we have less resources. I have more equipment. I have fewer staff, fewer personnel. Let's face it, buildings are getting more complicated. Access to buildings is getting more complicated. Schools are, we're solidifying the exteriors to our schools to make it so that people can't get in. People that we don't want to get in cannot get in. So it gets complicated because I could potentially have multiple jurisdictions or multiple locations involved. So if any of you have ever had an active shooter incident or even a swatting incident, you've seen how many agencies will respond in those situations. Just personally, I've had a situation where somewhere between 35 and 40 agencies responded because when you have an incident in a jurisdiction and it hits the media, or a text message goes out, if you're on a college campus or you're in a high profile institution or town or city, when that alert goes out, that text message goes out, a lot of people get it. And you're going to get a lot of responders. And it's going to be difficult to try to control all of that. So having those mutual aid partners is fantastic. Having lots of folks show up is great, but you need to make sure that we have a plan in place and that the folks that need the access can get the access when they need it. I've seen some pretty extreme situations where in a hurry, a responder will, go to very great lengths to try to get into a building. And in a couple of cases where they've injured themselves trying to get into a building to try to respond. And so in this case, we know that we have a proven method that's safe, and we can make sure that they have access to get where they need to get, and without having to use some, extemporaneous means to try to get into a facility or delay access to that facility, as we've seen in many cases as well. I know that there are some of you that are part of this discussion that are on mechanical key. Mechanical key is a proven and trusted method that again allows first responders to get in quickly and without getting anyone injured or doing damage to property. So I don't want to leave those folks out of this discussion. Some of the things that we'll talk about, we'll discuss ways that you can expand on your mechanical key program as well, either until you're ready for an eLock program or discussion, or until one of your partners is, because something that we're seeing right now is a lot of departments have smaller places within them, like campuses or military installations or corporate facilities that are wanting to have their own program. So they don't want to block off access to fire or police, but they also, maybe have their own local entity that they want to get in. So I think in that case, that's why we're seeing some electronic key implementation in mechanical key jurisdictions, and we can definitely coordinate both of those things. So with that, we're introducing the eLock system, which I think, as I've said a couple times, there are some of you on here that are very familiar with the eLock system or have already implemented the eLock system. I know that some of you have implemented the very basics of the eLock system and are wondering or thinking about, how can I expand this? How can I get more value for it? How can I get other entities and other jurisdictions, either external departments and jurisdictions that are coming in, or internal that I need to also get access. Maybe it's a school, or it's law enforcement, or security folks. So these are the very basic fundamentals of the eLock system: the key secure and the key defender. The E key is the heart of the operation, really. It's what allows you to access the box. The box does not require power. The gate switch, the power shutoff box, those things do not require power, because the key provides the power to unlock the box or to unlock the gate. The Knox Connect is obviously the thing. It's kind of like the brain. It's the thing that brings everything together. It's the cloud management system. It allows you to control all of your users, who has access to the keys and who has access to the boxes. And it also allows you to set the parameters on your equipment. As many of you know, you use PIN codes to check the key out of the key secure or key defender. And if we have somebody who's trying to just punch in PIN codes to check the key out, we have ways to lock them out so that they can't. And you have complete control over that, who has access and how many attempts I have to try to get the key out of the key defender or key secure before it locks out. Now it's useless to me as a bad guy. So all of these products together, and we're going to talk about the whole family of products in a minute, but this is the basic foundation of the eLock system: the key secure, the E key, the box with the eLock, and Knox Connect, and how it all works together. So I want to talk a little bit about what I said before with the local control. So you can control who has access using Knox Connect. That's the brain, and that's what is really what controls who has access. Well, first of all, you have to have the equipment. You have to have the key secure, key defender. You have to have the E key. And then I can control using Knox Connect who has access to that. And then beyond that, I can, using lock codes and other things that we can get into later, but that controls who has access to the box, or who has access to open the gate using one of our eLock gate switches, or who has the ability to shut off power using the power shutoff box, and my favorite is who has the ability to turn power back on once I've turned it off using the power shutoff box. So using the E key system allows you to control that access at the very basic level. With mutual aid, I want to grant access to folks before, and I always say, in my past life as a fire marshal and a person responsible for emergency management, I used to always say the last place or the worst place to meet somebody for the first time is at the incident, right? So I don't want to roll up to an incident and have an officer or another engine company or somebody else there, and I'm like, I don't know who you are, I don't know what your training is, I don't know what you're doing here. That's the last place I want to meet someone for the first time. And that is very true about access. If we're going into a school, I want to make sure that the individual who's there with me is an authorized individual and should be getting into the school. So we're going to have those discussions ahead of time. We're going to have training exercises. We're going to have tabletop exercises. We're going to meet each other, at different functions so that we know each other before we get to the incident. And that's when the planning for the E key needs to happen as well. You need to start the planning ahead of time. You need to think about, who is it that I want to have access to a school? Obviously, I want the school, maybe I have school resource officers. They're my first in. They're likely already there at the facility. And sometimes it's implied that maybe they already have the keys, but that's not always the case. So it's important to know uh, what access the resource officers have and where they can get you, maybe once you get in, because the school resource officer, if something's going on in the school, he's probably going to be, since he's already there, he's going to be at the incident. Um, he's not going to be going out to unlock the gate for someone else. So if he's at the incident, we need to have that access for the next responder who's coming, whether that's law enforcement or EMS or whoever. So ensuring that we have those discussions ahead of time about who's going to have access, who should have access, and then how are we holding each other accountable for keeping control of the keys, and whose Knox Connect system are we using? So the great part about Knox Connect is I can add and share with other jurisdictions. I can add within my own jurisdiction. I can give access to different parts of Knox Connect. So if I have law enforcement and fire and EMS, I can set up different groups within those entities so that they all can play in their own sandbox, but we all play in the bigger part of it. So talking to each other ahead of time before the incident occurs is really where we need to start having the conversation about, okay, who has access to the perimeter, who has access to the building itself, and who has internal access to things as we go through the response process. And the great part about Knox Connect is it allows local control to stay local. So some of you that are on this call that are using Knox Connect already, you know that you have complete control over the system. We have all the way down to we have one primary admin person who controls all the access for everyone on the account. You can create other admin roles, but the primary admin is the focal point. They're at the top of the pyramid, and then they control who has access to Knox Connect, who has access to the keys, and who's authorized to go where and when. So Knox Connect allows you to, is really the brain behind allowing you to control your system. And expanded access does not have to mean uncontrolled access, because within Knox Connect, you can see all of the people who have access. You can see everything that they have access to. You can control who has access to what in your jurisdiction, and you can use the audit trail and notification system to find out where and when people are accessing things, when they're checking out keys, when they're accessing boxes. Even if somebody from outside of your jurisdiction, if you're sharing lock codes with a neighboring jurisdiction and a call comes in and they arrive first and open a box in your jurisdiction, that will be in your audit trail. And you can also set up to receive a notification that someone from a jurisdiction outside of yours responded to one of your facilities and opened the KnoxBox. So you really can truly have complete control and access to everyone who's coming into your jurisdiction and using their e-key. And so that's just an expansion of the visibility and the accountability is the audit trail. The audit trail information is there to help you identify, who's accessing things and when, how often they're checking out keys. I had a department a couple of weeks ago ask me, I really want to know how often someone is accessing a med vault. Just curious. And so we set up and I showed them, okay, this is where you go to find the information. And by the way, you can get a report. You can set that up weekly, monthly, daily if you wish, to get a report that shows, okay, over the course of the last 7 days, someone has accessed a med vault in our system or in our jurisdiction, 25 times or however many times it is. So that information can be valuable for you for many reasons. I don't really want to go into them because I don't know how you would want to use it, but using the audit trail information can really help you identify some things operationally. I'll give you one example. We had a EMS department that was not sure if their EMS team, if their staff folks were doing their pre-checks, their counts before they went on shift. And that process should take about, 15 to 20 minutes. Well, they looked at the audit trail and they discovered that in a couple of cases, the med vault was only open for, a minute and a half. So in that case, those individuals were not doing the proper count because it would take longer than that for it to occur. But what they've discovered is that a majority of their staff were doing what they were supposed to do because it was showing the med vault was open for the period of time it should have been in order for them to do the proper accountability check for the narcotics that were in the safe. So it can allow you to use the audit trail to, and that's just on the med vault side. It can allow you to ensure people are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing on a daily basis. So lock code sharing. This has most recently become a very simplified process where within the system itself, you can have a handshake agreement between your jurisdiction and another that you want to allow each other to access your boxes within the eLock system, or gate switches, or power shutoff box, whatever it is you want to allow them to have access to. So within the system, within Knox Connect, there is a page where you go and say, okay, I want to share with neighboring jurisdiction A, and it extends the hand out to them, and then they will get a notice and they can decide, you know what, I would like to share with that jurisdiction. So they extend their hand, and then you say, okay, great, let's shake hands, and then the handshake occurs. So both sides have to agree to this mutual lock sharing, and it allows you to very quickly grant access to other jurisdictions or inter-departments that are also on eLock system, and also it allows you to revoke it if you need to do that. Maybe something has occurred that makes it to where you can no longer share. It could be a mutual trust that's been broken, or maybe a legal decision that's happened, or whatever it is. And you can say, I need to revoke access. And so you can also do that very easily in the system. I think now having the ability to do this is going to create much more lock code sharing situations because it is such a simple process. And I know we have folks on here from all over, and you're going to have different territory sales managers and different application specialists that cover your territory. So I would encourage you to reach out to them, and they'll be glad to jump on a call and show you how you can work together with your partners to share lock codes. And I think this is something we're going to see more and more as we move forward, as we have more departments using the eLock system, and as mutual aid and sharing cross-jurisdictional access becomes necessary. And the last thing I want to say about that part is that, again, you have control. That local control is not lost just because you're sharing lock codes with another department. You have control over who has access and who doesn't. And so in this scenario, if you have a partner agency that arrives first, if you've already had that handshake agreement with each other that you're going to share lock codes with each other, then they're going to be able to show up with their e-key that they've checked out of their key secure key defender, and put their command code 1 into that key and open the box. And again, that process is being logged by Knox Connect so that you know someone came into your jurisdiction and opened your box. And also on their side, it's going to show their admin folks that have access to Knox Connect. It's going to show them that one of their people came into your jurisdiction and opened a box. So you can both see it, and you can both identify, who it was and the date and time that they did it. And that access is defined. Who has access to what? So in a minute, we're going to talk about, what that looks like. But it allows the responder to arrive prepared, to open the box, to get to the facility, to get to the person who's having the problem, or to get to the incident as quickly as possible. And then afterwards, you can do the activity can be reviewed to see, who it was that accessed and the date and time. As an investigator, you have I've talked to a couple of people about this recently, where they've had a fire, and the investigators wanting to know, okay, I've got a report from dispatch that tells me, when the call came in, when our folks arrived on scene, maybe have the fire alarm information that tells me, when the date and time the fire alarm was activated, assuming it's correct, because sometimes fire alarm systems date and time may be off for some reason. But usually you're going to get accurate information from dispatch, but you're also going to have the information about when the department arrived through the eLock system, because it's going to show, a date and time stamp for when they unlocked the box and they got the key out. Or the keys out. And then also it's going to show when they put the keys back in and locked it back up. So you'll know how long they were on scene. So all of those things are being tracked. And then also as an investigator, access to the scene after the fact is important as well. So, you can use that tracking process to say, the folks who accessed the scene all went through the KnoxBox and got the keys out. And so I have a date and time stamp for everyone who accessed that fire scene after the fact. So there's very useful information in there, not just from the standpoint of response, but also from the standpoint of an investigator who's trying to get information about what date and time the call actually occurred, or who had access to the scene after the fact, and also who did not have access to the scene after the fact. So all important things that you can get from the activity in the audit trail. So now that we understand how the eLock system works, we can really dig into this mutual aid discussion about all the possibilities for who can or should have access. I've talked a little bit about schools. We can talk about higher ed and campuses. There are corporate facilities that are now starting to lock their gates or lock their access. Even residential neighborhoods, access to the neighborhood through the gate, access to things within that residential area. Tribal facilities, where I may have community centers and hospitals or health clinics, tribal government facilities. So all of these different entities that can work together for mutual aid. And maybe in the past with mechanical key, where we just did not feel comfortable handing someone a key to the city. Now, using the eLock system, I can control who has access to things and when, and where. So you see Public Works on there. Have a couple of situations where the Public Works folks have access to, like the water tower, there are padlocks on the gates to their water facilities, water treatment facility, or water tower. So they can access those padlocks. We have some situations where utilities or schools have access to their own boxes. Campus security is a big one. We have a lot of campuses across the country now that have their own eLock system, and they're now in control of their Knox program, and they allow outside responders, fire or police, to have access to it. So this goes into two things. One, the pre-planning for, who all needs access, and then two, how do we stage and plan that and have a controlled access model and who has access that makes sense for my entity. And again, I can maintain that local control who has access, when I grant access and when I revoke access. So think about all these. Is just a list of some of the partners, but in your jurisdictions, you may have others that you can think of, either off the top of your head or with a little brainstorming with some other departments. So this is kind of what I was talking about with schools, tribal communities, airports. The primary response fire it may be the fire department. In many cases, it is. The fire department is going to be the primary responding agency when it comes to Knox. And there could be other authorities that also have access, whether it's law enforcement or the schools themselves or tribal law enforcement. We have many cases where law enforcement may be the one that shows up to the gate and they have access to the padlocks that are around the airport, and they open that padlock and get the gate open so that when fire and EMS arrive, the gate's already open, and now I can get the fire apparatus and the ambulance, and any follow-up law enforcement folks can just get right through the gate. But that's all they have access to is just the padlocks that are on those perimeter gates. They would not have access to any of the facilities at the airport, or again, like residential locations where it may be law enforcement that's first there, and so they have access to the gate switch where they can open the gate, and the fire department and the EMS folks that arrive can just very quickly drive through the gate and get to the incident much faster. It seems like with heart attack victims and people who are in cardiac arrest, like getting to them as quickly as possible is the real key to keeping them with us. So not having to sit there and wait for a gate to open is important. So thinking through the access thing, I call them layers, thinking through the layers of access. And once I grant someone access, I don't have to grant them widespread access to everything. They can have access, like I said, to maybe the perimeter gates, or maybe to gate switches or padlocks, or maybe power shutoff boxes. I obviously want the fire department to be able to shut power off if there's a fire, but maybe I want to allow the utilities folks to also have access to those power shutoff boxes. Sometimes you may have a situation where the fire department may not be comfortable turning the power back on. So in that case, you can have the utilities folks say, okay, everything's clear and we're ready to turn power back on, or we're ready to turn power off, whichever. And you've got those utility folks that have access now using their e-key. So think through the different layers and the different possibilities of each facility. Campuses, tribal grounds, large corporate facilities, government facilities, those are big. And I may, as a government entity or a tribal entity, I may be comfortable allowing the fire department to get through the gate and maybe get to the community facilities where I need them, but I don't necessarily want them to have access to the tribal government facility, or maybe the health facility. So I can control even beyond that who has access to just those certain facilities. And that's all done very easily using the e-key. Something that's come up a lot lately, in particular with schools. We have a lot of states now that are passing laws that each school must have a lockbox box at every school facility. So how do we accomplish that? In some cases, it's simple. In most cases, it's not. And you usually will have a local jurisdiction that's using Knox either on a mechanical system or an electronic system. And in those cases, you can put a box on the school and the fire department has access and everything's great, right? Except that these new state laws are saying schools must have boxes accessible by fire and police. So now you've got to have a larger conversation. This goes back to that pre-planning again. making sure that everyone has the access that they need when they need it. So I don't have to, as a fire department, if I'm not financially prepared or maybe just operationally prepared to switch to the eLock system, that's fine. You can still maintain that mechanical key program that you have and works so well and is trusted. And then you can allow the local entity to implement their own eLock system. And so we're seeing this a lot at campuses. We're seeing this at government facilities, federal facilities. We're seeing it in schools where the fire department will put in a 4400 box that has a dual lock. The top lock is mechanical, so the fire department has access, and the bottom lock is the e-key. So now I can grant, as the school has access to open the box. They can respond in an emergency. But the other thing that works great is it allows them to update the keys. Being on a college campus for many years, it seems like the keys change constantly. People are changing the locks on their doors. You have professors that come and go, or grad students, or labs that change hands, and so the key changes. So if you give the school system the ability to access the box, they can keep the keys up to date. They can make sure that the keys that are in it are the right ones for when you respond. So in addition to providing access for their first responders that have an e-key. So the fire department doesn't have to give up anything here. They can use the mechanical key to open the top lock, and then the local jurisdiction or any other responding agencies that have eLock that might need to be having access can use the eLock to access. So this has become a very good solution in many of those situations. And this, again, this allows you to preserve that existing fire response and the procedures of that response. Nothing changes for you. If it's a fire call and you respond to the school or to the location that has the dual lock box, you open the box, you get the keys out, you do what you need to do. But it also allows for, and it also reduces the need to share a mechanical key with another entity. You may not know how well they track. You may keep great track of your keys, and maybe you have key secure 5s or key secure 6s that you're using to keep track of those mechanical keys, but they may not, and you may not be comfortable with that. So using the dual lock box allows you to have control and not, have to give that mechanical key. You've got to meet the intent of the new state law in many cases, but this allows you to do that without having to unnecessarily have any or restrict your accountability. You can still keep this centralized. You're still responsible for the program. In some cases, like I said, you may have a campus that does not have a program or has a mechanical program that's part of the fire department, and they want their campus law enforcement to have access now. So they may use dual lock boxes with an electronic key, and in that case, that means they're now responsible for that program and for those boxes and for that core, that electronic core, and also responsible for making sure that you still have access using your mechanical key. So all of this, your response procedures do not have to change. You don't have to adjust the way that you're responding. And maybe at some point, your department may say, hey, we're ready for the eLock program now. Great. Then you can start implementing that. You can start phasing that process in. But until you're ready, this allows you to easily implement a new program, allowing other people to have access without changing the response procedures that you already have in place. So we've talked about the layers and all the different ways that that you can access the facility or get people to the incident. But I just wanted to include the whole family of Knox products now. So there are some interesting ways that we're using our products for first responders. Like you can see the narcotics security there, the Med Vault. We've used med vaults in some situations where they're at the entry to a school. Law enforcement personnel can show up, put a PIN code in, and that vault opens up and it's got maps. to the school in there, and maybe the keys that they need to access the school. So there's been some very interesting applications that we've used for all of our products. So I say that to encourage you to, as you're doing your pre-planning and you're thinking about the jurisdictions and that are either outside of yours or the interjurisdictional ways in which you're going to think about using the eLock program, that you engage with your territory sales manager and your application specialists and anyone that's at Knox to talk about all of these different products and the different unique ways in which we can really help you get access to incidents and to keep people out that should not be there. So some things that you want to consider when planning is who needs access. Where do they need that access? What devices or recesses or resources should they have access to? Earlier I mentioned like you may have a tribal facility or a tribal property that has multiple buildings, maybe some tribal government or a health facility or a community center. So if I want to allow access, what do I want to allow access to? And maybe that's access to fire to all of them and local law enforcement, maybe just to the community center where there may be a call that they have to respond to, and EMS access to the health facility. So you can really control what access they have to where. When should that access be available? When do I want to allow them to have access, during the day or at night? And then who approves that? Like I said earlier, within Knox Connect, we allow each group to have one primary admin. That primary admin has control over the entire system for that jurisdiction. And if they want to share a lock code with another department, it has to be that department's primary admin that allows access. It can't just be any other person that's in the system. So it has to be primary admin to primary admin so that they can share with each other if they wish. And so that primary admin has a lot of control and authority to control who has access to their own system. Then how are we going to review this, and how often are we going to review it? We're going to sit down and look, at our response procedures every 6 months, to get a good idea for how we're using this. And as we expand it, build a plan, put together a plan for, okay, we have never allowed law enforcement to have access in the past, so we're going to start kind of implementing that. And then we're going to think about where can we allow public works or utilities folks to have access. So start thinking about what that plan looks like long term. Start working with your territory sales manager to make a plan of what's this going to look like 6 months from now as we implement the system, and a year, 2 years, or 3 years down the road. How expanded do we really want to see this program? So again, the key takeaways here are, we're trying to simplify mutual aid access, reduce the reliance on physical keys if we can, or if it's necessary, if we need to. We can control access. We have local control over the users, the jurisdiction, anyone that comes into our area or our jurisdiction, who has access to it and what. And then it gives us the ability to expand the access to other agencies and other partners that we want to have access. If I don't have access, I can't just take my e-key to another jurisdiction and open a box. That's not how it works. We have to have that handshake agreement in Knox Connect, the brains of the operation. That agreement has to be in place first. I can't just go over and open someone's box if they have an eLock. It doesn't work that way. So it's all expanded access that's approved, by your agency at the local level. We want to improve visibility and accountability. We all love the mechanical key. It works. It's trusted. If I have key secure 5s or key secure 6s, I know when someone's checking out the key. I know when they're putting the key back. What I don't know is what they did with it while they had it. So that's an important piece that the eLock product allows is showing, what they did with that key while they had it out, and it makes it significantly more easy to allow other jurisdictions to open boxes or gates or whatever in my jurisdiction. Again, the next step is to really start that pre-planning process. Work with your partners interjurisdictionally. So the folks that are closest to every day, work with them first. Develop a plan for what the system is going to look like 6 months or a year from now, and then expand that. Start having discussions with your neighboring partners. See what their plans are. Are you planning to switch to mechanical to electronic lock, or are you planning to stay with the mechanical key? What are you planning to do as we move forward? The last thing you want to do is implement a program that locks people out or unintentionally leaves your neighboring responders out of the equation. You want to make sure that the system that you're putting in place is more accessible and much easier for everyone to use, not more difficult. And we can help you with that. Reach out to your territory sales manager and ask them, hey, can you come into my jurisdiction? Maybe bring your application specialist or someone else from Knox that can help explain to me, how we can get the best use and the most value out of our system. Maybe you've recently switched to eLock and you're seeing all these other products and you're like, how can I really like that power shutoff box, or I really like those gate switches. How do I now implement that into my planning or into my everyday response? And so reach out to your territory sales manager, or reach out to someone at Knox. You've got that QR code there that you can scan, and you can fill out the quick sheet, and it'll come to us, and we'll get it to the right person so that they can reach out to you and get something set up.
Thank you, Justin. That was a great overview. So at this time, let's open up for questions. This is a part of a regional 4-town mutual aid system where departments regularly cover one another's communities. Their question is, would each apparatus need to carry the Knox e-keys for each community using the eLock boxes?
Yeah, so that's obviously the best way to do it, is to have the Key Secure 6 in the apparatus, so it's on the front line equipment that's going out to the call, to resolve the incident. We do have other solutions like the Key Defender, that's for like command vehicles. And I have seen some situations where as towns and cities or jurisdictions start to implement their program, again, this is like that, that first year or that first 6 months as we start to build our program, until I can get a Key Secure 6 on every apparatus, maybe I give all of my command vehicles a Key Defender. I can't put a Key Defender in an apparatus. It's not built for that. But if I have a Key Defender in a command vehicle, my department policy is that a command vehicle shows up at every call, then in that case, that's one way to accomplish the goal, until you can get those key secures on every apparatus. You can also, we have docking stations that are connected to a laptop, and you can check out the e-key from that docking station on your laptop. That's not necessarily intended for the first responder or the frontline responders, but I see this a lot with inspectors, and with my own program, all of our inspectors had docking stations where they could check out the e-key and they would have it on their person. So there are many ways that you can activate an e-key, but yeah, for that frontline team that's going to respond, you're going to need a key secure or a key defender at some point.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, the key secure also can hold a mechanical key as well as the key defender. So if you're still in the mechanical system, it's flexible enough to be able to hold two different types of keys.
Yeah,
so we
have a lot of jurisdictions that will say, okay, I want to implement an eLock system over time, and I'm not comfortable forcing everyone who's already purchased a KnoxBox on the mechanical system. I'm not comfortable forcing them to move forward or to purchase a new box. So we're going to over time, we're going to have them change out their core because we can change that mechanical core to an electronic core in many cases, not all, but many cases, and allow them to do that over time. But moving forward, we're going to be we're going to be using eLock. So that's where that key secure 6 that has the mechanical key and the electronic key allows you to slowly implement that process over time.
That's a really good point. Thanks, Justin. We have another question. Do the keys get updated remotely, or do they need to be brought to a computer or a programming device?
So the key defenders and key secures are connected by Wi-Fi in the station. You can also connect them. You can connect key secures using an Ethernet connection. Some departments have MDTs or other place to connect inside the apparatus. There's other equipment now. It seems like more and more equipment is requiring to be connected to some sort of cloud service. So they're having a lot of departments have iPads now in the truck, so they've already got some kind of connectivity. In that case, you can plug the key secure into an Ethernet cable, and you can get that constant updates. If it's on Wi-Fi at the station, the key secure updates while it's in the station. When it leaves the station, it still operates this perfectly. You never know anything's any different. And then when you come back to the station, it will resync with the cloud and update over the Wi-Fi at the station.
Yeah, and the beauty of Knox Connect is, when you're connected to a Wi-Fi or Ethernet, that it also syncs up the software, right, on the actual hardware, the devices, but also the audit trail as well. I know for the previous models, you would have to physically take a laptop, right, or computer and plug each device in to be able to update that software. But with this new electronic solution, you're able to do that automatically as long as it's connected to a network.
Yeah, and like you said, any firmware updates that we push out to the equipment, whether it's the eKey or the key secure key defenders, those updates occur automatically over the system through the cloud system.
So the last question is, for those departments interested in transitioning from mechanical to eKey, where would you recommend they start? Do they need to transition everything at once, or can they just begin with a particular mutual aid relationship or use case?
I think you have to think about your own personal needs first, right? So what are your own reasons for wanting to move to eKey? It's probably accountability. It's probably to increase accountability to, what they're doing with that key. I still have some departments out there that don't really have any control of their mechanical key. They're not using key secure 5s or a key secure 6 to lock it down. So in that case, that may be your reason for moving forward. So think about your own internal reasons and what you need. And then once you go from there, you can think about, what are my everyday operational needs? Is it sharing with other jurisdictions that are nearby? Do I have staffing resource issues? And now I've got more, I'm implementing more mutual aid. Do I have schools where I need to get law enforcement access to? So first of all, think about your own needs. Think about why you might want to implement an eLock program, and then go from there. And you can implement this in a process. It may be, we have some departments where they say, we're going to buy a couple of key secures, every 6 months or so as our budget allows, until we can get one in every truck. So it may be that's the need. So you got to look at your financial availability, and then you got to look at what your operational needs are just locally, and then start thinking about how you can expand it. And that's what I mean with the planning. Is it may be something that you implement right away locally, and the expansion may be something that you do over the next year or 2 years or 3 years.
All right. Well, that's a great place to wrap up Q&A. Justin, before we close, are there any final thoughts or key takeaways you'd like to leave everyone with?
Yeah, I think the most important part is, if you're sitting there, I know there's a lot of folks out there that are thinking, man, I have a program. It's a great program, but I think there are better ways that we can do it. And whether that's through what we've talked about here today, or just what you know about Knox in general, or just what you've heard from your neighboring partners and mutual aid partners, reach out, contact your territory sales manager or scan that QR code. And we're happy to come and have a discussion with you anytime. We'll work together with you and your local partners to find solutions that work best for you.
Thank you, Justin, for sharing your perspective today and just really bringing firsthand experience as a former fire marshal and your current work with departments and agencies to the conversation. And thank you, really, everyone who joined us today. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and we hope that you found the discussion valuable. Like Justin mentioned, if you'd like to explore whether this eLock system supports your access needs, please go ahead and scan that QR code. And if you have any product or application questions, feel free to reach out to Justin Daniels. His contact information is on this slide. And thanks again for joining us today. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.